language is a thread that connects the people to their land, their ancestors, and even how they see life.
Even while growing up, like personally, my mom would always say, "Oh, stop speaking vernacular." That's when I try to speak Yoruba at home. Yeah. It's always like, "Oh, speak English. Can't you see your mate?"
You see yourself adopting or changing from dropping your own native language. Yes. Because imagine you going to India to speak Yoruba.
I feel like when there is no written form of a particular language, it's going to be very, very difficult to pass it on. You can't take away the language and then expect the culture to still be there.
Like, your language is not shaming you. Somebody even said, "I don't speak my language because it's shaming me."
Both the father and the mother in this case now are not even speaking the same language, so they cannot even communicate to themselves in that language, in a particular native language.
Yeah. We should encourage, especially the young ones, encourage them, even adults too. There's no age you can't learn a language. Actually, there's no age. Learning stops when you die.
Bonsoir, je m'appelle Paul. Avec moi,
Afambo, Odoziako, Joanne Eze. Bien, don't insult me in this French language.
My name is Adewale Oluwapelumi.
Welcome, Pelumi.
Thank you.
By the way, we're supposed to.
Okay,
What's this?
You get it.
Exactly.
All right.
Today we're talking about. I mean, you can see us representing. No, mine is just with my dressing though. I should represent with my language as well. I was expecting you to do that, but it's fine.
Sorry about
Leave
that.
her alone.
Today we're talking about language extinction, and it's very shocking to see that some languages are actually going into extinction. In Africa, for example, over 200 languages have gone into extinction. To start with, what does it mean for a language to go into extinction? That means that there are no native speakers of such language, or there's no descendants speaking the language existing again here on earth. Or there are several categories. Some languages, on the other hand, are probably going into being endangered, while some are nearly going extinct, meaning that they most likely will go into extinction before in the next 20 years, basically. 40% of the world's 7,000 languages are currently endangered, meaning that they are most likely going to go into extinction very soon, with one language disappearing every 2 weeks. It's a very sad one to see that language is one thing that is going into extinction. I mean, we've seen other things going into extinction, right? I mean, there's speculation that there used to be dinosaurs and they've gone into extinction, right? But it's sad to see that, because for me, language is not just what we speak. Language is how we see ourselves. I mean, language is a thread that connects the people to their land, their ancestors, and even how they see life, how they see the world. So losing such a thing, right, you're going to lose a number of things along with it. I think one of such is people's culture, people's dressing, food, way of greeting.
The totality
like
of the people.
It's a lot of things that we're going to lose if we're losing anybody's language. So imagine for Africa now that has lost over 200 languages, meaning that we've lost over 200 kind of people, how they talk, how they see things, how they dress.
Okay, let's talk about the historical events that led to the language extinction. Number one is the colonial era, and this took place from the 15th to the 20th century. And this happened where Spain, we had the superpowers like Spain, France, Portugal, Britain, the Great Britain, they came with their entourage and came to, make these particular native languages to decline, to go into extinction. They had to impose their own indigenous languages into this particular already existing language and their culture. And also, what also triggered it was also war and the genocide that happened in Rwanda and all that in several places. So this particular thing, the war aspect is that many people died. Obviously, when war comes in, we lose a lot of lives. And you know, the shocking part of it is not that we just lost lives. We lost people that could speak the languages, the native languages. So the more they died, the more the languages were going into extinction, because there were no younger people that were there, well enlightened or well educated to, you know, pick up these languages and export it or to transfer it to other generations to come. So a lot of things really happened. Even the World War that took place from 1939 to 1945, you know, a lot of things really happened during those periods. And this was actually how the colonial era had effects. And also the mobilization, industrialization actually has played a very huge role in the current day.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's very interesting to see how all of this turns out, because I mean, for colonial masters coming around, suppressing native speakers of several languages, right? And one thing I even want to really understand is how all of these events really has impact on the native speakers.
Okay, so I feel like when the colonial masters came, and like you said, the war happened and people died and all of that, there were no people left, you know, to pick up their languages, indigenous languages, to like continue, you know, the flow, the trend. And the languages they brought, their own, like the colonial masters, their own language, the language they brought was like a dominant one already. It was already like getting too, how will I put it? It was
everywhere, basically.
Yeah. It was like too much for them. And then the people were just very little. They could not continue with their own language. That's why they had to, you know, continue with, the ones that the colonial masters brought in.
Well,
so
I think another interesting one for me is how it just transcends into the educational sector. I mean, in a place like New Zealand, for example, where we have Mario, right, as a language, one of the things that happened there is the fact that even in their schools, if you are seen speaking your native language, you are going to be punished in school. And not that's even far away. Like here in Nigeria. Growing up, right? If you should go to school and you are learning, you speak your language in school. It's said that you are speaking vernacular.
Not just schools, even in the family too. Like even while growing up, like personally, my mom would always say, "Oh, stop speaking vernacular." That's when I try to speak Yoruba at home. It's always like, "Oh, speak English. Can't you see your mates?" You know, all of that kind of thing. So it was a decline in speaking Yoruba, and I had to start speaking English with full force, and I had to like drop my own dialect. Yes, I had to drop it to one side and then, you know, just continue. So it's not just schools. I feel like families too has like a great impact in this language extinction thing.
Well, I think another one again is the media dominance. I mean, at the moment now, we're all seated on this table, and the only language that we're all speaking together here is English. Right? It just shows that. So one way or the other, right? If you want to communicate, if you want to get anything from the media space, today now on social media, on almost all the website that you go to visit, you really see people of some other languages there. The language that you see on whatever websites that you're going into now is most likely going to be English. I mean, on YouTube is English. You will see they have on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram. The language that you see most of the time is English.
Yeah, I'll come from the angle of urbanization and migration. So imagine you now, you say, okay, this country shall after you, let me move to another country. And you know, by the time you've moved to another country, you are now welcoming a strange culture, a strange language, you know. And most of these countries, they will be like, before you can even do anything, you have to learn their language. You have to learn how to do a lot of things that you will make them adopt you as their own, even though they might not see you totally as their own, but at least you can have an effective communication with them. They can assist you with some things, and at least there will be communication, you know, there will be free and good flow of communication. So if this is where migration comes in. By the time you move to another country, you are forced to adopt a particular language that you don't even want to, but for the sake of maybe you went there for economic purpose, or you went there for education purpose, or something like that, or whatever you go there for, you see yourself adopting or changing from dropping your own native language. Because imagine you going to India to speak Yoruba. You are coming back home.
another thing is the fact that even where you are going to, there's nobody that is speaking the language in that area. So it's more like you going somewhere now, and then just like me sitting down here now, and then I'm conversing in a language that you both don't understand. What you just do is like, okay, when you are done, you leave, right? Like, so it's more like there's no one around you to even speak that language. And another thing has caused that. I mean, there was you mentioned India, and I know India as a one that have very rich culture and things like that, very rich traditions. So there's this lady that was born and raised in the UK. I saw a video of her on the internet, and it was very interesting because she had the face, she had the hair. She didn't dress like them. She dressed like someone that is in the UK, right? But when she spoke, she didn't have the accents of someone that was in India. And then she was also asked the question that, can you even speak your language? In fact, interestingly, our own name is not in English, right? But rather it is it's an Indian name. But even with that, she cannot still speak the language. She might, I don't know if she practices other traditions, right? But the fact that she cannot speak the language already, she has detached herself, right, from
the entire
her true origin, exactly.
And I'm sure her accent too is already off it already.
I mentioned that the accent is not even close to. It's more like she's speaking like any other white person that is also in the UK.
Wow.
It's very interesting, right? And all of these things, we just see them just spiral round and around. And there's also the issue of inter-ethnicity marriage, interracial marriage, intercontinental marriage, everything. I mean, there's even within countries. I mean, in Nigeria now, we have about 500 languages that have been spoken here in Nigeria alone. So meaning that there's a very high possibility of me marrying someone that is not a native speaker of my own language, right? So if I'm marrying someone that is not my own language, and then she's coming from a language that is different, when we give birth to our children, and I think that's usually a debate when it comes to marriages like that. That what language are we going to train the children? Because able to start with, both the father and the mother in this case now are not even speaking the same language. So they cannot even communicate to themselves in that language, in a particular native language. Rather, they are communicating in a lingua franca, whatever region that they find themselves in.
And I think another thing too is this climate change. You'll be wondering, how does climate change actually affect? Climate change, we have deforestation, we have flooding, we have wildfire, and a lot of things. I talked about war, and this is also connected to climate change as well. Because by the time climate change come into play, let's use flood as a case study. You're just there, in a community, and then flood comes into play. A lot of people are divided. The whole community that usually used to be together, eat together, speak the same language, gets to be divided. And by the time there's a division, remember, some people might die in that flood, and we have a total number of people, good number of people that we've lost, people that can actually speak these native languages. And the ones that we now have left, they are either taken to the River Niger or they've been taken to another side. So there is no more connection again. Everybody has gone to different angle, and it's another different story entirely.
Something else that can affect this whole thing is absence of written form. I feel like when there is no written form of a particular language, it's going to be very, very difficult to pass it on, especially when there's a gap between the older generations who can pass on these languages to the younger generations, and there's no written form for, if there's a mode of, we're teaching this language and all of that, and the younger ones don't see something, they don't see it in writing that they can read on. And when these older ones just, pass on when they die and all of that, there's nothing that they can fall back on. There's nothing to hold on to. So they eventually tend to forget the little that they got from this.
This brings me to when I was very little, how my dad used to tell us stories, folklores, oral tradition. Because, that's a passing on from one culture, one story to the other, telling your younger kids. I remember how he gathers us under the moon, tells us stories. Exactly. My mom is always in the kitchen cooking what we don't know, but we'll just be, with him, telling us stories, how the tortoise used to drink palm wine and get drunk and all that.
That fair share of story, because there's always a jackpot, someone that's the tortoise, right? The tortoise being cunning, the tortoise being doing this. There's always that story,
main
actually.
character.
I'm not sure I even know any main story per se right here where I'm sitting, just trying to look for, but I'm not
course,
sure
you will now.
I do. But if I should sit down very well and think, I feel like I should be able to get
My own is I just try and gather kids and tell them what they've told you.
I think
Just pass it on.
I should try to pass it on.
Yeah, and tell them to pass it on too.
Instead of passing it on, I'd rather write it down so that
Yeah.
it will live longer. We'll go on a short break now, and once we return, we'll come back to the discussion, language extinction. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people, and let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah 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 convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in, and let's drive straight into the heart of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hued Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hued Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hued Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change.
Ẹ káàbọ̀ aṣọ lórí Timeline. Orúkọ mi ni Paul, pẹ̀lú mi ni
Afambo Oduziako Joan Eze.
Ati.
Adewale Oluwapelu.
It's been a lovely ride, I must say. And in case you're wondering why we're doing all of this, is because today we're celebrating the International Mother Language Day. Exactly. It's one that's just to celebrate our culture, to ensure that our language, our mother tongue, doesn't go into extinction.
Exactly.
It's not easy, but we're talking about extinction and how languages go into extinction. What are these processes that would finally lead to a language going into extinction?
Okay, so aside the loss of speakers that leads to the death of a language, language extinction mostly happens with bilingual speakers. That's people that speak two languages. Yes. So the process, like you asked, it starts with language acquisition when, you originally have just one language first, but then you have to acquire another language. Then it moves to language shifts. That's a language would
Dominate,
it dominates the other one, making the one you originally know as the lesser one. Then from the language shift, it moves to language endangerment. That's putting the language at risk. And then it eventually moves to language extinction, which is language death.
Oh, it's right. So me and like this, for example, that my mother tongue now is Yoruba, right? And then I acquired English, for example, and now actually, there's a shift from my mother tongue, right, to English, right? If I'm not careful, you'll
kill it.
Exactly. That's when I think it makes more sense now.
Yeah.
So it's not just the deaths of the natural speakers that actually lead to all of these things. I think it just aligns with how all of this the colonization, all of these things we mentioned earlier, right? Does lead to all of these things. Because I mean, already before the colonial masters came, there was a language that was being spoken in whatever region that there is, and then now we're now moving. And there was a shift. Exactly, and then from that shift now we are getting to where we are today. I mean, a number of languages have gone into extinction. I mean, for Ayak, for example, the last native speaker died in 2008. 2008, and it's for that one, for example. Now it means that although they were, to start with, right, Ayak was a very small group, right? So it was not so large. And one of the things that led to that was the fact that they didn't marry themselves so much, right? And most of them had to migrate out of the land. And in all of that, one way or the other, the language, it went through all of those processes that you mentioned, and then at the end of the day, the language just went into extinction.
Well, this particular, you just talked about the ones that went into extinction, but the one I want to talk about are the ones that are still in existence, but they are like endangered. So we have the Cherokee and the Apache. So these particular two languages, that's from the Indigenous of United States of America, they're actually still in existence, just like I said earlier. And people are actually still speaking the languages, but from time to time, it's looking like it's going down, it's declining, from stage to stage, exactly. But it's still in existence. It's just that it's under attack.
So that's what it means to be endangered. So like in moving from a language going into extinction now, there's a cost to it. So what are these things what are the costs of losing a language? I mean, I earlier mentioned that language is a thread that connects people to their land, their ancestors, and how they see life. I mean, it might just look like just little statements, right? But in the real depth of it, it's deeper than what it looks like. So what are the things that's at risk of us losing, even with language that go into extinction?
Okay, so like we mentioned earlier, the culture of the people would eventually die with the language. You can't take away the language and then expect the culture to still be there. Like everything just has to go. The culture, the societal beliefs, everything. It's just like stripping a man naked of everything that's attached to him. So I feel like when a language goes into extinction, I mean, there'll be no more people to pass on. Everybody will just scatter. Like we've been saying, everybody will just scatter. Nobody to hold on to anything concerning that culture, concerning that,
Basically, there will be loss of cultural identity. You can't tie yourself back to any place. You just be like a lost file somewhere.
Well, so it's a lost file. Well, I just feel, to add up to what she just said, you will literally be on your own. You'll just be an island.
Yes.
You don't have any roots. You don't have any connection. Nobody is calling you. You are not calling anybody. If you can't even trace where you're coming from. And I want to take it to the individual line now. If you go to your village, I want to use myself as I don't know why I'm using myself, Shy, but I know they will come for me. But anyways, I went to the village one particular time, and this was what forced me to learn my dialect. There's a difference. I don't know. There's a difference between
there's actually
central language and dialect.
Yes.
Exactly. So I went to the village. I schooled in one of the best universities in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyways, I went to the village, and that particular school I went to, I was already mixing their own type of Igbo language with mine. So it was sounding coarse. It was sounding somehow. So I met this elderly woman, and I was like, I greeted her in their own dialect. Not my own dialect. And she looked at me and was like, you are a foreigner. That's what she said. Like, you are a foreigner. I'm not trying to mean that she's biased, or she's trying to say that those people are not Igbos as well. But she told me that no, you can be bilingual, you can be multilingual, that's fine, but your dialect is still your dialect.
Yeah,
so you
should
need
not
to embrace your dialect. You need to learn your dialect. So from that day, I was like, I have to be intentional about learning my dialect. So it's just, they will just push you one side. If they notice that you are not learning it, you don't know it, they will make you understand that you need to learn
I think
it.
that's one of the things that will happen at the end of the day. Because I mean, if you cannot trace your roots. You don't have an identity. You don't know your land. You cannot point that, oh, this is where my great grandfather was. I mean, lately, right? Anytime I travel home, right, to my village, right, my father would just drive us around the village, right. So when this is where grandpa used to be. This is where this used to happen. This is where that used to happen. And for me, it's just. Not that I even met these people, right? But one way or the other, I just connect to them on a different level. And another thing again that happens is, I mean, we've partly mentioned it, right? Which is the loss of oral tradition. There's no way we cannot take oral tradition from any language, and in the sense that, for example, now we are all here together now. You have your own stories. With every language has proverbs, has songs, what's it called? Folklore, stories. Different things basically that just make up language. Language is more than just speaking it. I mean, there's the literature of language, there's the art of every language, because with every language, right, comes art as well. So if a language is going into extinction, it's not just the language that is going into extinction.
Everything attached.
Everything it's involved.
Everything that it carries with itself is artifacts. It's everything that there is. The traditions. I think tradition is one that is actually very important, because in my land, for example, what if you want to greet, you're expected to prostrate, and then if it happens hypothetically that my language goes into extinction, we won't see that tradition happening again. It's a tradition of how to the coronation of a king, how it should happen. All of those kind of things will just get lost in transit. And then there's also you mentioned the isolation of people. You just you cannot trace yourself to a particular place. I can't say that, oh, I'm from this part of the world, I'm from this part of the world, because you're speaking something that everybody speaks. I mean, English is a language that everybody at this point speaks in whatever continent that there is. It might not be on the same level, but it's more like
universal.
Exactly, it's a universal language. So you cannot tie it that, okay, this is how I speak it. But however, there are already efforts that are being made, right, to ensure that languages that are probably endangered or languages that are already in extinction, try to look for a way to bring them back as well. I mean, for example, a particular one from UNESCO, which is called Decade of Indigenous Languages, and the program is structured in such a way that we would see languages, right, just to ensure that languages are being preserved here and there at the end of the day.
Yeah, and another thing I want to quickly talk about is documentation. We've talked about how we can pass on languages, literature and art and music and all that to younger generations by writing it down. So oral tradition is still important, but I feel it's not really enough. The written tradition should also collaborate with the oral tradition. So by the time these words, the linguists just like you, we thank God we have people like you in the system already. So people like them should collaborate with native speakers, to pen down all these oral traditions to make sure that it is safe for life and it will keep being transferred to the next generations to come.
And also promoting and supporting, studying and learning all these languages, especially in schools. Like, we should stop saying, oh, this is vernacular. Even within families too, we should stop this vernacular thing. We should encourage, especially the young ones, encourage them, even adults too. There's no age you can't learn a language, actually. There's no age. Learning stops when you die, actually.
And again, don't make your language is not shaming you. Somebody even said, I don't speak my language because it's shaming me.
Imagine.
Because of the way you have to position your mouth or the tongue to pronounce some words. No, your language is your pride. Your language is your identity. So be proud about it. So that's it.
I mean, there are some languages that have gone into extinction one way or the other, and now they're finding their way back. They're finding their roots now. I mean, for example, we have the Mario, for example, the
Maori,
the Māori, right? that particular language is one that has gone into extinction a while ago, and now they're seeing efforts by the government now, right, trying to bring such language back. I mean, for Maori, right, it was bad to the extent that you could not, if you speak the language while in school, right, you are going to be punished while in the school. The official language in school then was was English language, right? So if you're not speaking English, it's expected that you are seen as someone that is if you speak the local language, this is Maori, you are seen as someone that is not good, that is not up to par, right? And there's also you are seen as inferior, and there's also the punishment that is attached to it. So what was done by the government was to integrate the language back again into school, and now you are seeing more people. I mean, just some months back, I guess there was a video of someone speaking the language at the parliamentary house right there in New Zealand.
In 1800, something actually happened. There's this guy called Eliza Ben Yehudu. He's not really our mate, but sorry, I'm calling him this guy. But anyways, I'm sure he was very young as at then. So he saw Hebrew language, he remodernized it, he refurbished it, and then brought it back. I said, okay, let's
for these guys on it's very according to guys as well. for him, right, it's very different because at that point in time, right, there was no oral Hebrew again. For Hebrew, it was just something that you learn in churches because most of the scriptures were originally written in Hebrew language. Exactly. So for him, right, it happened that he had to now sit down with all of these languages and now modernize it again. And one thing that actually interests me about him was the fact that he started from his own house. And then after his own house, then he started a school that was fully Hebrew, and then it just grew like that. And
exactly, just to add up to that, that was how Israel adopted the language, and currently till today, that's what they're actually speaking in their country.
I mean, like, it's like there are very interesting stories here and there at the end of the day, right? So what will you say that can be done by individuals, what we say that can be done by government to ensure that we don't see languages going to the stage of being endangered? We shouldn't have things like that again. I think for Hebrew now, for example, one of the things that saved them is the fact that they had written form. If they didn't have a written form, right, there's no way exactly it should have just gone just that way. So how can we ensure that no language dies again?
So I'll keep reiterating this written form. You just have to write it down. And then for individuals, it takes intentional efforts. You have to be intentional that, okay, I don't want this language to die. I don't want this language to go extinct. It has to come from within. So intentional efforts from the part of individuals, and then from the government, they just have to find a way to include these things back in schools. I feel like schools would help on just going out and creating public awareness to people. Okay, this is your language. They need to start from schools. They need to catch these children first. So maybe from there on, the whole thing will start to come back together. But individual efforts has to be intentional. Then the government too, they need to find a way around it, including it back in school, the curriculum.
I will just give a shout out to parents that are very intentional about making their kids learn these languages. Is very, very important. And the fact that your kids are learning these languages, I used to tell people, you can actually gain favor from speaking your language. Yes. Because I have stories, but there's no point. There's no time. I know of somebody that's actually gotten a job because she spoke her language so fluently. Because there's one thing for you to learn your language. There's another thing for you to speak it well. Because you cannot tell me that you can only hear and you cannot speak. So you should also know the two. Yes. And it's not be bad for you to also be bilingual or be multilingual, because in a contemporary society that we have, you have to learn one or two languages, especially when you want to go to the market and talk to one malam, for him to give you extra tomatoes and all that. And all that. So you can actually gain favor from other tribes as well. So it's very good.
connecting to people, connecting to our land, connecting to our ancestors is very important. We don't want to lose our art, we don't want to lose our artifacts, we don't want to lose our stories. And that's why we're here seated and saying that it's important that we all guard our languages, ensure that we preserve our languages, ensure that they don't go down, ensure that you write them down. Probably you have stories, you have myth that you still remember, try to write them down, pin them down somewhere. In fact, now it's not just even writing them down, also ensure that it's somewhere on the internet so that anyone can come back in the next 20 years, 100 years, and come back to your language and speak it with all boldness. My name is Paul, and it's been a lovely ride here on Timeline. Until we meet again, Odabo.
Bye.
Catch your phone.